conventionally the media business model has always been volume publishing, right? That do more and more of content, do content on anything and everything, serve ads on it. For good or for bad, AI completely disrupts that business model, right? It's a good thing for us.
As a smaller newsroom, we were never in the SEO space either ways. I think when we first started, we tried to do that a lot. Optimize it for keywords, optimize it for headlines, and then after a point we realized that unless you bring in volumes, you cannot play this game. You cannot be in this space at all. So then we started focusing only on quality. And that's where we are trying to apply the various AI learnings that we are getting.
A lot of reporters are also using AI to aid their reporting. So the last 2 Pulitzer awardees, right, have publicly sort of talked about how they used AI for some of the basic research work and scraping the document. Run us through like a dilemma that you face as a reporter.
There are tools that can absolutely make our jobs easier. My colleagues on the investigative units, AI is essential for them to wade through so much data. As an example, the Pulitzer Prize winning entries, those were all to simplify the research, not to produce the journalism. And that is an extremely key distinction and one that I think absolutely has to be kept in mind at all times.
The more they use the tool, does it really address the skepticism, or do you think it makes it worse?
More and more you start using the tool, you realize it's a great intern. And will you depend on your intern to publish it without your scrutiny? You won't. And that's the key thing, when you're using AI tools.
In India, there are still not well-established practices or standards of how to declare use of AI. What are the kind of practices you have set in your organization as an editor? And at what point do you declare to the reader that this is AI?
Where the image itself is the story. Where the image itself can either be very can be provoking someone to do something, entire community being hate being generated against them. The publisher has a responsibility to tell the reader that this is AI generated and this is representative.
We've already seen a lot of misinformation. We've already seen how certain newsrooms, certain news organizations have sort of gone and misreported on certain things. So just run me through that. Like, how do you see that as a threat?
The danger is where the lines are blurred, right? The lines are blurred in terms of what video is capable of nowadays. Our competitors, CTV, just recently they actually created a rape survivor in a story. They recreated the face of a rape survivor. So the face was fake, but the person's words were real. And that was really controversial.
My biggest pet peeve with AI is that some of the AI products that are being made are actually quite dumb. We haven't really seen the kind of AI innovation that you've often seen outside India, right? Where a lot of use cases have come from reporters. There have been a lot of operational efficiency. Why do you think that is it?
We make mistakes while converting lakhs to million to rupees and crore. Yes. So it's a huge problem, right? So what this guy did is that he was learning to code, and he built an internal tool where any reporters can enter the value and which currency and copy the exchange rate, and then it gives you the rupees to dollar or dollar to thing.
Where do I find this?
A typical coder would have built it, but now a journalist with a limited coding knowledge is able to build it.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Samra Attar and I'm a reporter at the News Minute. Welcome to the Media Rumble once again. So for this session, as you can see the title, it is Can Journalists Make AI Their Ally? So as you all already know, AI has already shaped much of the globe, and journalism is very much a part of that transformation. So this session will ask if AI can expand the possibilities of news gathering, storytelling, and audience engagement, while also grappling with tough questions of ethics, transparency, and accountability. So this session will deal with how do we build tools that can fact check at scale when there's always a risk of bias and misinformation? And how do we balance innovation and ease with safeguards that protect the very core values of journalism? I'd like to mention that this session is powered by the Canada High Commission, and we are very grateful for their support. On this panel, we have Jency Jacob, managing editor of Boom, one of India's leading fact checking platforms. With over 20 years in journalism, his stints include working with Business Standard, NDTV Profit, and CNN IBN. We also have John Samuel Duraipandy, co-founder of How India Lives, a data platform that makes India's vast troves of public information accessible and usable. A journalist for more than a decade, he's previously worked with the Economic Times. Salimah Shivji, South Asia correspondent for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, Canada's public broadcaster, based in Mumbai. She has over 2 decades of experience reporting with CBC on corruption, climate change, and conflicts. To steer this important discussion, we have our moderator, Chitranshu Tewari. Chitranshu has spent over a decade in product and subscription roles in media, most recently leading Newslaundry's product and subscription business. In 2024, he was among 25 media leaders globally selected for the AI Journalism Lab at the Craig Newmark Graduate School of Journalism. Please join me in welcoming our moderator, Chitranshu, and our panelists.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for making it on a Friday afternoon, that too for a post-lunch session. I know post-lunch sessions are always risky, but we'll try our best to keep this as engaging as possible. So quickly, a bit of a context. I feel like I was just discussing this with Jency. I feel like this question is already like at least a year old, because I don't think the important question now is, can journalists make AI their ally? I think a more important question is, how should we use AI, right? I think people who work in the media and among readers also, there is consensus that we should use AI, but an important question is that how we should deploy it, how we should use it in a way that obviously it optimizes for efficiency, but it doesn't sort of compromise on like ethos or public interest journalism. And I feel like the panel that we have can really give like a 360 viewpoint of that. Because we have John, who's been a journalist. He runs his own enterprise, but he's also off late. He's done a lot of training for journalists on AI, so he can get in that perspective. We have Salimah, who works with like a Canadian public broadcaster, so she can bring in the reporter's perspective. And we have Jency, who obviously works as managing editor for Boom Live. Boom Live, all of you know, they do a lot of stuff around tech. They have a sister publication called Decode. But I don't know if you guys know, Boom Live also has a chat bot that you can sort of interact with on their homepage, where you can sort of verify if you have a certain claim that you saw on WhatsApp. And obviously it runs on the kind of journalism that they do. So let me kick it off. Jency, I'll start with you. One of my things with AI is, and you tell me if I'm being like an optimist around it. Conventionally, the media business model has always been volume publishing, right? That do more and more of content, do content on anything and everything, serve ads on it. And that's how publications have made money. And that has also been one of the primary reasons why there has been tensions between, say, editorial and sales and marketing, because you have very different incentives. For good or for bad, AI completely disrupts that business model, right? Because often when you're searching, if you're on Perplexity or you're using ChatGPT, a user will not even end up on your site. So you have no incentive to sort of optimize for SEO and just like that kind of vanity traffic. So my question henceforth is, as an editor, as a reporter, do you see it as an opportunity? Is it a good thing for us specifically? And when I say us, for like smaller organizations that are deeply interested and invested in public interest journalism?
Yeah, thanks, Chitranshu, for that question. Actually, as a smaller newsroom, we were never in the SEO space either ways. I think when we first started, we tried to do that a lot. Optimize it for keywords, optimize it for headlines, and then after a point, we realized that unless you bring in volumes, you cannot play this game. you cannot be in this space at all. So then we started focusing only on quality, and that's where our entire fact checking newsroom, and then we also built a decode specifically to do this, so that we are able to report on stories that matter to us as journalists, as well as to the readers on the intersection of tech and society. So I don't think anything fundamentally has changed for us. The bigger publishers are going and doing deals with AI companies like Google and all of them, saying that you cannot take our content, you have to cannot scrape our content till the time you are paying us. There are different models for that. In fact, just recently I spoke to one of the companies who has built a tool where they want publishers to get on board, so that they are able to. So they are doing it at two levels. One, they are tying up with publishers. On the other side, they're tying up with the Gen AI companies, and they're trying to bring both of them together on a common platform. And they're saying that once you do this, then even the smaller publishers have a bigger chance of probably earning some revenue out of their stories that is being scraped. So yeah, to answer your question, does it make a difference to us? Not really. The smaller publishers will have to carve out their independent space, understand what is it that the readers come to them for. Like, readers come to us for decode, they come to us for fact checking stories. Can we do that better? And that's where we are trying to apply the various AI learnings that we are getting. And probably as we continue to discuss this, I can talk about what we are doing as well.
Salimah, question to you. So, as a reporter, I'm sure you're skeptical of AI, and for good reasons. But there's a lot of AI. So obviously there are two use cases, right? You can use AI, you can embed it in workflows. There's a lot of stuff you can do for operational efficiency. But a lot of reporters are also using AI to aid their reporting. So the last two Pulitzer awardees, right, have publicly sort of talked about how they used AI for some of the basic research work and scraping the document. Run us through like a dilemma that you face as a reporter, where that the risk and the dangers AI and AI platforms pose to journalists, but also as an individual, right? Because you want to be at the top of your job, right? You don't want to lose out just because you have this stand that you don't want to use AI in your reporting.
Yeah, so I'll just preface this with saying that I'm here to bring the fear factor into all of this. Obviously, as a correspondent and a reporter, that's always a question. You see how newsrooms are transforming, right? Things that we wouldn't have seen 5 years ago, we're seeing. Every legacy news outlet, like the public broadcasters like the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, they all have AI advisors to kind of guide journalists through and reporters through what they can use, what we're allowed to use. We all have AI policies. Like, it's a whole new world, right? So balancing that fear, I would say, is the distinction that you had in your question, right? That there are tools that can absolutely make our jobs easier. My colleagues on the investigative units, AI is essential for them to wade through so much data. As an example, the Pulitzer Prize winning entries, those were all to simplify the research, not to produce the journalism. And that is an extremely key distinction and one that I think absolutely has to be kept in mind at all times. So I think the international award was, they were kind of analyzing bomb craters and kind of counting. But I should know this. I'm a reporter. So they were analyzing how many bomb craters were in the Gaza area, and then another one was basically going through thousands of police documents, basically to create the story. So if you think of it in those terms, then that's absolutely not as scary. But yeah, journalists are skeptical of the generative tools, right? Using writing. But I think it's important to say appropriately skeptical. I think one of the AI advisors at the New York Times says, we're teaching reporters how to use these AI tools. And he said the reporters are appropriately skeptical, because there is that line of being aware that there are some ways that can make your work so much easier.
Yeah. Okay. John, just building on this skepticism, right? You've been doing a lot of these trainings in partnership with JNI, where you've been exposing journalists to a lot of these AI tools. In your experience as as journalists sort of understand tools better, is there less reluctance towards the tool? Are they able to see for themselves, or do you think the skepticism, like what I'm trying to understand is, the more they use the tool, does it really address the skepticism, or do you think it makes it worse?
Yes. So I'll just draw upon the experience of the past training batch, which we had like 22 journalists from 22 newsrooms. And what we essentially did is that we introduced the tool to them. The program was focused on data journalism, and we only said that these are the 4 AI tools: Gemini, Google AI Studio, Notebook, and Pinpoint, and showed them 4 exercises. Like this is what you can use. And the output is that journalists were able to apply these AI tools to their pain points. So all journalists, we have 2 types of work, right? The one which is like doing it, we enjoy reporting, we enjoy writing, and the glory of the story that gets recognized.
Yeah.
But also we know that 80% of our time is grunt work. To get to that story, we need to do a lot of.
I worked in product and subscription. Trust me, I know all the jobs journalists hate, which end up at our S. So yeah.
Absolutely. So what we found out is that journalists were able to apply this to their pain points, and I would categorize into 3 broad categories, buckets. Where AI is being used by the batch, and the first bucket is that data or information processing. Right, that's where the most of the grunt work is there. And then once you have processed the data or the information, then you have the analysis where you make sense of what's happening. And the third part is the presentation. How do you write the story, you social media post or image or video, and where we saw almost 90% of the output. The entire batch produced some 80 odd stories. And 80% of their effort was in the first bucket, wherein they used the AI tools for their grunt work and reduced the time. And I feel then they entered the batch, there was great fear. But more and more you start using the tool, you realize it's a great intern. And will you depend on your intern to publish it without your scrutiny? You won't. And that's the key thing, when you're using AI tools, use it as an intern, and it's think of it as an unlimited interns you can employ for different activities. And all that you need is to set it up once, and then it does the job for you. But whether you depend on it to publish it, it's your editorial eyes that has to.
So just a quick follow up, John. So one of the fear factor with AI, and I don't think that's unique to journalism, it's also that a lot of jobs that are critical, right, in any industry can be taken over or will be taken over by AI. You've been a journalist, you work a lot with data, you have data products, you also do data consultancy. Could you give us an example like that when you are working or collaborating with newsroom, right, specifically on a data story? What are the kind of stuff that you can use AI for without sort of, impeding or stepping on a journalist's ability to tell the story?
Absolutely. So I'll give you probably 3 examples where people have applied, and that give you a great insights on how, when, where the AI tools can help. Uh, it's 5 o'clock in the evening, and WHO releases a 350-page report, and you are a print journalist, and you want to file your first copy by 7:30. Or imagine you're a TV journalist, whatever it is. What do you usually do in my era? Is that you quickly download the PDF, go through the summary, and then from summary you go to that chapter, and then quickly see the tables, the relevant thing, and then try to put together a story. All that now reporters can do is that upload this in the notebook LM, and ask for the summary and key points. It need not be the points that you finally publish. No. All that I'm saying is that did he give you the quick summary apart from the press release that WHO has given? And this ideation and pitching for stories, the time to pitch is one area where reporters in the batch have used it extensively. And the second area is that I call it as data decoding. In India, we have this very, very strange creature, right? Not just PDF documents. You have data in Excel, some government official in his own wisdom takes a printout of that Excel sheet and he scans the Excel sheet printout and then he uploads the document. uh, you do anything with OCR reading and stuff like that, you'll find it very, very, very tough to make sense of it. But trust me, some of the AI tools are doing a fantastic job in getting data from it. Almost 90% of my job is done. This is the second application. Don't Not just data journalists, even reporters who are covering home ministry or finance ministry, they all come across tables. And your stories need tables, right? You need this thing. So this is a second example. And the third is where slightly you have to be sensitive. Is that every newsroom have a style guide, right? And one of the reporters, I haven't got the permission, so I can't name him or the publication. What he does is that it's a regional language publication, and they have a certain way of writing the Malayalam characters and all of it, tagging it together and all of it. So he generated a list of prompts mimicking his style guide, which his publication has developed. And this poor guy has to edit a long form story every day, 1,500 words in Malayalam, which will take him 2 hours to edit it. And all that he has done now is that through iteration, not just 1 or 2 days, through an iteration of 2 to 3 months, he has built a set of prompts which he has saved it in Notepad. And whenever a long form story comes, he runs the prompts and the stories along with it, and it does the basic cleanliness check.
Yeah.
And after that, what he does is that he again goes to look at the copy and reads every word and line and to see whether it's accurate. So these are, there are
Basically, as long as you have like a journalist in the loop.
in the
So,
loop.
yeah,
So
correct.
I'll just add one more point, Chitranshu, is that in all this case, journalists are not getting replaced. Their time is being made productive, which means that as journalists, I have more time to do the most important thing that I can do, which is reaching out to people, using my mind to do the analysis, and spend time on writing and all of that. And with the current scenario, one way that you can bring audience to your website or your news site is that a deeply reported piece, right? And the more you take the grunt reporting out of your reporters, that much time you have for them to work on something else. Sorry for the long answer.
Yeah. No, I think that's where it ties in with the question I had asked Jency also, that at some point, like the optimist in me, the hope is that eventually it will incentivize more of deep dive long form journalism. And because if you take away that incentive of doing more volume publishing, that's like a win-win. But okay, so Jency, I wanted to touch more upon, so the thing with AI is it's so now we've had examples of how it is already being used, right? But at least in India, there are still not well established practices or standards of how to declare use of AI, right? Like a lot of legacy companies like Reuters, I'll ask Salimah also, like they have well established practice. In India, I don't think there is. There's also a nuanced argument where it also affects. Okay, so let me give you an example. Now, eventually AI is like a tool, right? So for example, one of the things that we did at Newslaundry was that we worked a lot on accessibility, right? So eventually there's always work you have to do on the product end, but there's also work you have to do in terms of part of the publishing workflow, right? So any data visualization or any image you have, you need a alt text, right? Now, people on the desk, sub-editors, do not have the time to write precise alt text. So what we started using, like a custom GPT that was trained on a BBC alt text guide, right? So that's a very simple use case. Now, but if you do write in the piece, right, that in the publishing of this piece, we had used custom chat GPT. It doesn't even matter what use case, what it used for, but it immediately sends a signal to the reader that, okay, maybe I should not trust this, especially in a market like India where we have a trust deficit. You yourself were giving me an example. There's a flip side to it, where we had that story of that Afghan boy who hit in the wheel gear compartment, and then Times of India published a story with like an image which was AI generated, and then a lot of publications ran with it. So just run me through, like, what are the kind of practices you have set in your organization as an editor, and at what point do you declare to the reader that this is AI? Because how and like the way you use AI can be fairly complex. It can be something that it shouldn't even impact the reader's psyche when reading it.
Yeah, I think the example you gave about all text, that is a good example where even if you don't declare, it's fine because it's at the back end. There's a lot of work that happens at the back end, which is not visible to the reader. But if this is my position, not everyone may agree with it, but if anything that I do as far as AI is concerned is visible to the reader, then it's my responsibility to tell the reader that there is AI involvement in it. Like, for example, for decode stories, we have now started using certain prompts and certain tools to make images. It saves a lot of time. We don't have to spend money on hiring an illustrator. There is a very clear declaration at the bottom right of the image that it's an AI generated image. Now, why is this important? For some stories like the Afghan case that we talked about, the image looked real. It was not an illustration. It looked like a real image of a boy who's standing near the wheels of a plane, and there are two security guards who are standing behind him. Now, this is a classic case where it is a harmless story, so you can ignore it. But there will be cases, and there are cases where the image itself is the story, where the image itself can either be can be provoking someone to do something, entire community being hate being generated against them. The publisher has a responsibility to tell the reader that this is AI generated and this is representative. It is classic example of the pre-AI days, when if there is a representative image, you had to put a declaration there. So I feel Indian publishers are quite lax in this. We have seen that they take down entire stories without putting out even an editor's note. So I want to be hopeful, but I'm not sure whether that is going to be the case. We are now seeing even AI anchors being put out on the screen without a declaration. So I don't know how many of them would agree to do this.
But do you have a AI guideline for like
We do have AI guidelines. Our guidelines are quite clear that no reporter is allowed to write stories using AI. So what I tell my reporters is that if you are going to use ChatGPT to write your story, you have started your decline, because your career is going to end very soon. So be truthful to yourself. I mean, whether as editors we'll catch or not is a different point. And at the end of the day, I believe that as editors we are quite experienced in figuring out. Suddenly, if a reporter who cannot write a proper decent English script turns up with a very flawless copy, you can clearly make out that it's supported by AI. So we have clear guidelines. You cannot use that. Of course, you can use it for headlines. You can use it to generate tags, keywords. You can do summaries, of reports, as John was mentioning. All of that is available. And as I said, that we use it for a decode image as well. Apart from that, we also have something called as Ask Boom AI. It's on a very nascent stage, so I hope no one tries it right now and puts me in a spot, because at one of the events where we did that, one person did it, and thankfully she got a good reply on that. So yeah, but it's a small initiative. We are also experimenting. We are seeing whether it works or not. The other place where we are using it very well, because as a small newsroom, resources are quite scarce. We have a lot of translations from English fact checks to Hindi, Bangla, wherever it is relevant for that audience. Now we have a tool which translates the entire story, and an editor just needs to spend 5 minutes just to see whether the words are proper or not, whether there is no hallucination when it is getting translated. That's it. So, I think we are using it in a proper way right now.
Correct. Salimah, coming back to you. So one of the thing is that as a reporter, you may have all the skepticism and the right reasons, but within a newsroom workflow, you end up using different products, right? So for example, you do a lot of video stories. Everyone uses either like Adobe's products or Apple products. I was just looking at the product launch that Adobe had for their video editing software, and now they have features where if you ingest, say, like a 3-minute video, and if the AI sort of figures out what's the background, what's the story narrative, if you give up like a prompt, and if you have like a scene which you have not really shot properly, it can just fill the scene, right? And which to me is like really scary, right? Because we've already seen a lot of misinformation. We've already seen how certain newsrooms, certain news organizations have sort of gone and like misreported on certain things. So just run me through that. Like, how do you see that as a threat? And I'm also very keen to know, because you work with a public broadcaster, right? Like, I've heard stories that in a lot of organizations there has been pushback from reporters. So has that also been the case with CBC, right? That okay, that certain decisions were being taken, because this is also that a lot of these decisions are being taken not keeping the reporters in the loop, for that matter, right? These are decisions being taken for productivity, for efficiency. So yeah.
And or not communicated properly, I would say, to the reporters, to the people on the ground or in the field who, you know, don't have time to read up on an AI policy. But yeah, I would say, you know, every media outlet has an AI policy, and which actual programs you are allowed to use for the stories that you're working on. For example, at CBC, we're allowed to use Gemini as an example, and you can actually ask for a training course and they will show you how to use it in your work. I personally have not had that training. But yeah, to build on that, I think it's the danger is where the lines are blurred, right? The lines are blurred in terms of what video is capable of nowadays. I was just chatting with my editor recently, and she was just exploring the new tools that Adobe Premiere has. And we use Adobe Premiere to edit every single one of my television pieces. But now there are functions where you can change how a person is moving when they're doing the interview. You know, the person will be speaking and you can get him to raise his hand. He was never raising his hand before. So the fact that those tools are there is, of course, I would say dangerous and worrisome for a lot of news outlets, because you do have to rely on the ethics of the journalist and the editor using it, even if there is an overarching AI policy that is being implemented by your news outlet. And also the outlets are grappling in the dark a little bit, right? Things are changing so quickly, and they are trying to respond and give the proper answers to what we can use and what we should be using. But then at the end of the day, it's always a back and forth. I'll give you another example. Recently, our investigative unit was doing a documentary on Putin. I told you about this one, on Vladimir Putin. And of course, we broadcast in English, so they wanted to use a lot of his interviews and transcripts of what he had said in Russian, translated into English. The clips were too long for subtitles, so they asked, actually, the AI authorities at the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation if they were allowed to use a voice-generated Putin speaking English, which he had never done. Of course, he hadn't said those words in English. He said those words in Russian. And it was approved. They were allowed.
Which I'm quite surprised, because there's very little footage of Putin speaking in English, because I know he does speak English, but like as a policy, he doesn't. So it's not like there's a lot of training material they could have used.
So it would have posed an inherent question to the viewer, right? You're watching this documentary and you're going to think the same thing. Wait a second, did Putin say those words in English? Of course, it was approved with the caveat that it had to be listed as an AI generated voice is saying these words, but still, that's a distraction, right, to the viewer. So in the end, the executive producer of the investigative show chose not to. He didn't want to distract people with the tool that they're using. So I guess that's just an example to show there is a policy, there's a massive discussion as to what can be used, what we should use, and then there's also a secondary layer of what does that do to the story and how you're communicating that story, and that's what brought it back. But there are other examples too in Canadian media, and I'm sorry to be speaking from a Canadian perspective, but our competitors, CTV, just recently they actually created a rape survivor in a story, and they did broadcast it. They were very transparent about it, which of course is one of the rules that every decent news outlet would have, is that you have to be upfront about what you're using. But they recreated the face of a rape survivor. So the face was fake, but the person's words were real, and that was really controversial. They wrote a whole article explaining why they chose to go that route. It's more powerful, it's a real experience, and it's more evocative than having somebody with a blurred face, right? Because you're never going to have that interview done without concealing the person's identity. I'm also surprised that they chose to do that, because you're basically putting somebody else's words on a fake face. So it's just another example of the discussions that every newsroom is having, and the different answers, basically.
But
that people think.
as a reporter, do you think reporters should get like more agency in these decisions? Because like you may have reported on that story, like you may have a certain relationship with that survivor. So do you think from that standpoint, reporters also should get like more agency in like how these decisions are being, specifically in terms of AI, right? Because these are not just like operational efficiency product decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the reporter does have agency, because the editorial leaders do have agency, because the example in the investigative unit, they chose not to do it because they thought it would take away from the story. And I would never just blindly follow our AI policy. I think every journalist has to have a backbone, in terms of I'm not super comfortable with that. I think the story is powerful in terms of CTV's decision. I don't know what you guys think. I can ask you later. But in terms of the decision about using a false rape survivor, I think the words are powerful enough to be communicated past the fact that you're shooting them from behind to not identify them, or blurring their I don't love blurring, but there are ways to do it, and the words speak for
So it's a slippery slope, right? Like if your entire rationale is that you're doing it to make it more engaging, you may as like add more lines which were never being said. So there's no end to it then.
And each of them are basically polar opposite decisions to the same process, really, because the CBC one was we didn't want to distract, and the CTV one was we wanted to have the most impact, right?
For the same example, I mean, there's at one of the workshops, we saw, for as far as whistleblowers. Now, whistleblower or someone whose identity needs to be hidden, I think Indian news channels do a terrible job. Anyone who knows the person,
I don't think that's the only department
yeah,
where
I mean, one of the many, but so if anyone knows the person, you can make out by looking at the person's hands or legs or other parts of the body who the person is. So in one of the tools, they have shown that you can actually use Gen AI videos to blur the person's face properly, to also alter the person's voice, and also make the person look very different from what the person is, and then yet use the person's quotes exactly as it is. I mean, of course, the rape survivor is a very it's a horrific case. I mean, it shouldn't be used in that context. But there are whistleblowers whose identity cannot be revealed at all, and Gen AI tools can be used to also tell their story as well.
Yeah. But I think there are larger, like that Gen AI platform may be owned by someone who might decide to have a vested interest in revealing the whistleblower's identity. So, okay. So, John, I want to bring back the discussion more towards like the kind of product stuff that is being done. And I would love for you to just wear your product hat and your entrepreneur hat. My biggest pet peeve with AI is that some of the AI products that are being made are actually like quite dumb, to put it, right? So for example, when that entire AI thing happened, one of best shining example of AI use case was to have these AI avatars, right? And which, like, I don't know how it makes sense, right? Because it's not like broadcast news is not suffering through like a trust deficit. So the last thing that you would want to do is put like a robot or whatever, right? All the other use cases that we have seen are mostly around SEO, right? I think we are still caught up with that. So I know there are a lot of legacy media companies that are still trying to put around, okay, how can we automate the part where you just fetch content from Google Trend it like ChatGPT writes it and it directly goes into your CMS, right? We haven't really seen the kind of AI innovation that you've often seen outside India, right? Where a lot of use cases have come from reporters. There have been a lot of operational efficiency. Why do you think that is it? As someone who is like an entrepreneur, is it like a thing that we still only have sales and marketing people looking at AI? Where is the gap there?
Sure. So in the previous batch, we had three participants experiment with coding. And these are people who have very limited knowledge of coding, but they wanted to code and build some mini products for them. And we had somebody from Deccan Herald. And most of us who worked in the newsroom, we know that 90, or I'm just making up this number, almost it should be more than 90%. Uh, we make mistakes while converting lakhs to million to rupees and crore. Yes. So it's a huge problem, right? So what this guy did is that he was learning to code, and he built an internal tool where any reporters can enter the value and which currency and copy the exchange rate, and then it gives you the rupees to dollar or dollar to thing.
Where do I find this tool?
So he just shifted jobs. So the other person, he used to work in the sports website, and what he did is that uh, every cricket ball in an IPL has 24 metrics. So if you have 240 balls and then 24 metrics, that's the total number of data that he has in his thing. And for him to process that data is a huge effort. And he has built a tool, again, a guy with a very limited coding knowledge, wherein he gets the data, puts it, and he gets the output that he wants, where he can compare one team with the another with 4 5 parameters. A typical coder would have built it. But now a journalist with a limited coding knowledge is able to build it. So my first point is that the AI tools is breaking down the barriers. So if you are interested in coding, and there are tools that build function in Google AI Studio, you don't need to know coding at all, and you can build the first version. So that can happen. And second thing is that Excel or Google Sheets, right? Uh, Again, when we started How India Lives, we did a dipstick survey of Economic Times newsroom. And we asked them, like how many people use the Bloomberg terminal, how many people use the Excel. Bloomberg terminal is such an expensive terminal. It always used to be empty, that chair. Uh, Hardly anybody uses it. And people who knew Excel are also very in the low double digit, like 20 or 25, a very basic usage. So what this AI tools is now helping is that if you have zero Excel knowledge, you can't do anything. That's but if you know a little bit of Excel or Google Sheets, you can do your functional data analysis using the AI. So on the internal side of things, on the external side of things, we still haven't found people smartly using the AI tools. But I feel that eventually they will move away from mass production of stories using AI, focused on headlines, focused
We'll
on.
get there. You're hopeful.
We're hopeful
Yeah.
because the more and more I interact with people, they are now thinking of ideas to go beyond that. And they are now thinking from an editorial lens to say that if I have this output, this product, how can I create a product for it? And one of the biggest stumbling block, I'm with my very limited understanding of interacting with newsrooms, is that we are trying to force fit from a print era, then the digital era happened. We are trying to force fit that same content into the digital era. And now I feel even in the era of AI, we are trying to import the same set of content and all of that into this mode also.